we do with the
Yeah, we
remote
definitely
people?
have a quorum.
The remote people come in right away, or? So Karen will take care of them?
Oh, Karen is too?
Yeah, but she was only doing it basically.
I know, I feel like
I think she was kind of,
it,
All right.
there are
Good morning.
a lot of different seating next to
Good morning. Time being 8:02 a.m., I'd like to call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order, date being September 7th, 2021. First on the agenda today is introduction new business from Claire Garnett. If you'd like to come on up and introduce yourself. And
Hi everyone, I'm Claire Garnett, and I don't live in Westborough, I live in South Ferreau, but Westborough being the busy, booming town that it seems to be and getting better all the time, I had been looking for a place to open a store, and I found a nice little spot on the Rotary, right next to Rotary Pizza, so it was West Main Hair. So I'm going to be opening up a little gift store there, focusing mostly on handmade products from the local community and New England area. I currently, we have done some minor renovations to the store. We put up all new drywall, and I've decorated it, and I'm working on my displays right now, and I'm getting stock in, so I'm hoping to open up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And what I will be selling is mostly kind of accessories, but I will also be selling some artwork from a couple of local artists, some handbags, some jewelry. I actually will be selling some vintage jewelry as well. And from there, oh yes, candles and soaps and greeting cards, and I'll also be providing a gift wrapping service. So hopefully people will know my shop as a destination to go to get a gift if you're stuck, and that's what I'm hoping people will do. So that is me, and the name of the store is, I'm from Ireland originally, so I chose an Irish name. It's probably not going to be easy for American people to say, but it's Ahru Designs, but it's spelled A-T-H-R-U with a accent over the U, and I'm sure everybody will pronounce it Ahru, so, and that's very acceptable, so
Well,
that is me.
welcome to the town. We're excited to have you here, and it's
Thank
great
you.
to see some space being filled in the Rotary.
Yep,
Hopefully you've been in touch with Zach, and
I have. Zach's been most helpful.
awesome,
Yep.
great.
Yep, indeed.
Welcome. Thank you for coming in and introducing yourself.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we are on a tight agenda today, so we're moving everything along, and if we can stay ahead of schedule, that's even better. So next on the agenda is the business attraction in Hudson. We have Michelle Grasso here to talk to us about,
I don't think she's
but
here.
she's not here.
Not here yet.
I just sent her an email to check and see if, she's still able to come at 8:10.
someone at the back door, doesn't come out.
And this might be her right on cue.
What's that?
I said this might be her right on
Yeah,
cue.
I think so. Hi, Michelle. Hi.
You're up.
Yeah, we're a little ahead of schedule. We're 5 minutes ahead of schedule, so.
How you doing?
Right at the podium.
So Michelle had, I think Linda had put us in touch with Michelle. Michelle's, if I understand correctly, a Westborough resident
Yes.
doing business in Hudson.
Mhm.
And you're going to come in and give us an overview of your experience in Hudson, working with the town of Hudson. I think also your experience with the bid that they have in Hudson, which we're all aware of. So welcome. We appreciate you coming in to talk to us.
Thank you. Good morning. Thought I had a minute here. Good to see everyone. Yes, so I've lived in Westborough for 23 years and opened my business, Synergy Wellness Center, in Hudson 3 years ago tomorrow. And I guess I just wanted to share my experience with Hudson as a business owner, my hopes for Westborough as we move forward. I often see for example, local social media posts. How can we get our downtown to be like Hudson? And, you know, I sometimes throw out some, some ideas, so I'm pleased to share with you some of my thoughts. So you're aware and familiar with the bid with Richard Braga, who does an amazing job with communicating with, you know, on behalf of business owners with the, property owners. He communicates with the business owners around resources, around what is the community up to, what can help businesses be attracted to that community. There's a very good degree of communication and intentional communication around and efforts around this. But I think the secret to the sauce, as is often talked about in Hudson among not just the BID, which is the building owners, but there's another group called the HBA, the Hudson Business Association, which is the business owners, is that among both of those groups, the director of the planning board is at every single meeting. There is a great amount of communication. I don't know if that person is here, but I believe there's a lot of collaboration here as well. That seems to be the secret to the sauce, because the communication is clear and across the board around, you know, what grants are being sought, what efforts are in the works for 1, 2, 5 years from now for bettering the Rotary, for example, or whatever initiatives are underway are really, really clear, so that the building owners and the business owners are in the loop, and how can we help? How can we propel this forward? I think one of the other pieces that's an intangible is there's a real culture that I have seen around business owners wanting each other to succeed. They show up for each other. They come to their ribbon cuttings. They figure out ways to collaborate on holiday, you know, gift bag, you know, packages for the community, for you know, offering each other. Downtown businesses will offer 20% off to the other business employees at other businesses in town. So there's a lot of cross-pollination that's happening there. And there's no ego about it. We just want everybody to do well. And if there are ways that we can connect, whether you're a restaurant or a wellness center or retail shop, people are really open to that. And there's just a real spirit and undercurrent of wanting each other to do well. That's an intangible that I think is I found right away when I went to Hudson. I would also say that during what I have witnessed during this past year and a half, with losing some Main Street businesses during the pandemic, that the HBA and the BID came together to really intentionally decide what kind of businesses do they want to recruit to those open storefronts. They went to other communities and trying to leverage and recruit, really identifying what do we need here, what's missing here. And there are very few vacant storefronts at this point in town, and I think there's a piece of it that was due to that. I think as we all know too, what makes a downtown, which we have such a beautiful downtown here, is a lively, a lot of street life, right? Street life, people walking, people going to get their coffee or coming to eat or go shopping. What I have seen, and this was in the works prior to much longer, you know, many years prior to the pandemic, was this plan to widen the sidewalks to allow for outdoor dining. This was in place when they reconstructed the Rotary. If any of you have been to Hudson in the last year and a half, you've seen a big project there. That was underway for quite a long time to expand sidewalk space, to allow existing restaurants to expand, to bring in new ones which have come. And it has just made all the difference to see those beautiful evening, you know, fire warmers out there, and it just adds a dimension that makes it a walking town where people come and they are spending time there, you know, enjoying the local scenery. Some of the challenges are parking. You know, parking is an issue, but there actually is an underutilization of parking there, so it's actually a perceived issue, not a real issue. So as business owners, we try to communicate those resources to people. So those are just some of my comments and thoughts, but I do think that an intentionality about who we're recruiting, creating a vibrant street life, I do think outdoor dining is critical to that, and I think that was critical before the pandemic. And also really having open store, open houses. There are art galleries that come in there once a month on Fridays, for example, that have showings in open spaces. Again, just creating a welcoming and inviting experience for people, even with open venues that we can leverage to create that sense of community, which, by the way, was felt so strongly at our block party a couple of weeks ago. It was wonderful to see Westborough back, and I'm hopeful about what we can do here, too.
Great.
So I welcome any questions. Sorry that was a lot at once, but
Yeah.
just wanted to share my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you for your insight and comments. Any questions? Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you for your comments. I really appreciate you're explaining to us. I appreciate what you're explaining to us, the transition in Hudson, and we've had the opportunity to have Christina Johnson, your planning director, in to talk to us about the change and the transformation in the Rotary. So I do have a question. So you mentioned earlier that there was a parking problem that was perceived and not real. And the president of the bid came in and talked to us, and his name's escaping me, so apologies for
Braga.
that. Yes. And he mentioned that as well. He actually said that the parking that was removed in the Rotary was made up elsewhere. And we, as you know, you're intimately familiar with our Rotary. If we were to channelize the Rotary, narrow the right-of-way, expand the sidewalks, make them deeper to allow outdoor retail, outdoor dining, we would lose parking. How long did it take customers and shop owners to adjust and accept the change of the immediate parking in front of their doors? And are they happy with it now?
Well, it's interesting because the timing of it happened, the Rotary was under construction and finished last summer when many businesses were closed or just reopening. So honestly, the biggest amount of feedback about that Rotary was that the drivers were very upset because the lanes were much narrower than before. I didn't hear any talk about parking. I heard complaints about, I'm going to run into the curb. So there are still some spots there, many of which were initially used for curbside pickup, which has now shifted for the most part. I mean, I haven't heard any concerns around that beyond what was already there around there's not a lot of parking, and there's a very vigilant parking meter person, gentleman who goes around and gives tickets pretty vigorously. So the 2-hour limit is very strictly. I haven't heard a lot of complaints around that, honestly. It's been more around just the narrowing of the actual lanes.
Great,
So,
thank you.
And how about the bid itself and the fees that the landlords and business owners pay? Are they happy with those fees as far as they feel that they're getting their value for those fees? And then also, did the town waive those fees during COVID? Just curious on that.
I actually can't speak to that, not being a bid member. But as far as I know, they have not lost any members. I can speak about the HBA, that we continue to grow. The membership there is about $125 a year or something like that. We meet 5 times a year, and Christina's part of those meetings as well, the planning board and the bid. So there's a lot of crosswork there. You can also be parts of those meetings and not be a full member. You can be an associate just to get the information. So, I can't speak about that, but I do know that many business owners are also building owners, so there's a lot of cross there. But I think that they have seen these opportunities, especially now, really advantageous. They've pulled together resources. They had an accountant available for every business owner in the downtown district during COVID to help with any applications, or what do you need to do with your PPP, or anything accounting related. I think they've seen themselves as a great communicator during this time, and they have been in combination with the local chamber as well, which I should mention does an excellent job with communicating, all things state that affect a business at this time, which have been a lot.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a quick question, if it's okay. How does the HBA's role differ from that of the local chamber? Like, what are the things that the HBA does or the chamber does that the other doesn't?
Sure. So this chamber, as many chambers, operate, I think, a lot for networking purposes, for
Mhm.
promoting businesses, for collaborating, having grand opening ribbon cuttings, to networking events, coffees and events at the local brewery and so on. Whereas the HBA is a little bit more of, again, information and resource sharing. How can we collaborate and support each other's businesses? But it's not so much about, I mean, it is about networking, but it's really about the business community as a whole and what are our unique concerns. What are we going to do? Are we having the holiday stroll? How are we going to draw people in, and how are we going to, ameliorate, make it safe and all of that? So it's more around businesses, and whereas I think the chamber is more, as a traditional chamber, networking and cross-pollinating for corporate, success. Is that
That was very
helpful?
helpful, yes, thank you.
Sometimes there is not confusion, but we have talked about it with the HBA, and the bid is making sure that those are quite clear. Business owners have different concerns than the building owners, but the mission is the same for everyone to be successful and for those businesses to be thriving, so that everyone's doing well.
Anything else?
Yeah, I had one too, Michelle, if I could. You
Sure.
said there's a fee for the HO to be in the Hudson Business Association?
Mhm.
What's the fee for, if I may?
I think it's $125. I
Oh.
just paid it.
What's the purpose of the fee?
Oh, I
Does it
see.
go to- Do you have any ideas?
Oh, I see, yeah, sorry. Well,
That's all right.
sometimes we provide lunch at meetings, so we haven't in the last year, but we do contribute. For example, there's a holiday stroll. Well, it wasn't held last year, but generally it's a holiday stroll, so it goes toward, paying for the Santa to come, and, so going towards some of those community events that, we'll shut down Main Street and have a big event. So that might be one, for example. We try to contribute in small ways to the events. The bid does most of the financial contributions for some of those events. But the chamber, for example, there's a Halloween or a June community fest that the streets are shut down. There's a lot of cool main streets shut down to kind of do a Halloween event that has literally I give away 2,000 pieces of candy. I mean, there's thousands of people that come. Well, not this year, but there's a lot of community events happening in town. So both of those try to contribute to them. So fun stuff.
Anyone else? No? Well, thank you very much for coming
Thank
in. We
you. Thank you
appreciate-
all. Appreciate you having
Yeah.
me. Take care. Have a
Thank
great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great, so we're running a little ahead of schedule here. Next on the agenda has to do with the openings we have on the EDC here. As everybody knows, we have 2 openings. We have, I think, was it 7 applicants, Zach? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
7 applicants. What we will do is hear from each applicant. We have about 5 minutes for each applicant if they would like to introduce themselves, tell us about their background and why they'd like to be involved in the committee here. And then we will have time at the end as a committee to discuss the applicants and who we would like to, endorse going forward to the board, not the Board of Selectmen, what is it now? Select Board, thank you. And this is a little different than normal, as we all know. Typically, when we have an opening, we only usually, historically, have had 1 or 2 people at the most apply. And then it, in the past, has been handled directly by the Board of Selectmen. So this go-around, with so many applicants, the board has asked us to interview the applicants and give our recommendations. And from what I understand, we can recommend none to as many as all 7 if we'd like. And if, obviously, by recommending all 7, then that just gives the board, the select board, the discretion to appoint whoever they would like. So it is our opportunity to have some say for the first time in who may be appointed. A little bit of background on the board. Hopefully everyone is familiar with the board. You're here to be a member and hopefully understand what it is we do. I would say that really the main thing that we are here as a committee to do is to promote business in town. We work with new businesses who are considering coming to the town of Westborough. We also work with existing businesses. We reach out and try to help them as far as expanding and staying in the town of Westborough. A lot of times, and we just recently had an opportunity to meet with management teams of various businesses in town here, both existing and sometimes we'll have companies that are considering coming to Westborough that will reach out to us and want to meet with us, and we've done that just recently, as a matter of fact. And we try to obviously promote what the town has to offer to those people. Zach does a great job. He's fairly new with us, but he's hit the ground running, and he also works with various state agencies and to promote the town, and then reaches out to a lot of local businesses in town. One thing that we've had in the past, which kind of fell by the wayside, is an ambassador program, which is it's made up of, I'd say, non-voting members of the community, people who, it's a nice stepping stone, quite honestly, if you want to kind of familiarize yourself with the committee. Again, not a voting member, you would come to the meetings, and we also would coordinate with our ambassadors to join us with some of those business outreaches that we do. So it's a great way to learn about the committee. And then just lastly, I would say that we are also, right now, our committee is made up of, I think, 5 business people in town and 6 town staff, if I'm not mistaken. One of the things we have on our agenda today is to talk about changing that makeup. So as much as there are only 2 seats available as of today, in the near future, there could be a couple more spaces available. So if you are not appointed by the select board, I would make 2 suggestions. One, consider yourself for the next appointments that come up, and also consider joining the ambassador program when we get that up and running again, too. So with that being said, unless anyone else wants to add anything, if I missed anything?
I would just add, we have a grant program that is part of what we do, and so that businesses come before us with, that are either coming to town and filling empty storefronts, or they want to do some renovations to expand their offerings. And we have the capability to award them up to $5,000 to support those efforts, and it's funded by the electronic bulletin board in town. So I think that's a really important part of what we do for the community as well.
Great point. Thank you.
Question on that point. So just a quick one. I believe your criteria for you have to have at least for 3 years to apply for the grant?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. And I actually signed a lease for 2 years, being a new business. Didn't want to commit to too much because I've never done this before. This is my first adventure down this path. But I did sign a lease for 2 years with an option to renew for 2 years, and I'm just curious if that would rule me out or not for the grants, because I did do some renovations and.
Yeah, I think that's something.
I think that might be acceptable, but we would, I think the board would probably need to see that you have signed up for the additional 2 years once you've done that. So like.
Okay, so you mean then maybe in a year's time, if I decide to continue for the 2 more years, then you'd consider me?
Yeah,
Right.
if you exercise that option, so it would be, I guess, a 4-year lease at that point, and let's say you exercise that option a year from now, you
Yeah.
decided you wanted to stay, then I think
Okay,
that's exactly what Zach is saying. You
Okay,
could come
that's
in front of
great.
the board at that point.
all right, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? No? Everybody good? All right, so I think the first person on the agenda is Karen Henderson from Westborough TV. Good morning.
Great, good morning, thanks so much. I love that you guys have so many applicants. You didn't even know you were like the popular committee. All the cool kids want to be part of it. But I am Karen Henderson. I'm not going to take much time, although you know I can talk for a long time because most of you already know me, having worked together in my capacity at Westborough TV. But for those other applicants or our thousands of viewers at home, I am the general manager at Westborough TV. I've had a long time interest in the Economic Development Committee, just knowing how important that economy is to our local community. And so when the opportunity came up, I thought I would step up. I have a history in the private sector, and then I've done a lot in town. Westborough TV is a nonprofit. We're located right in downtown Westborough. And of course, we do a lot of work with a lot of different businesses and community organizations in town. A couple things I think are important for the EDC, that public-private partnership and the liaising between the businesses in town and our departments, I think is just critical to making sure we're in touch with those with those businesses, to give them any kind of guidance or resources that they might need, and keeping those contacts along the way, not just when they're a new business in town, but keeping that along the way so that if they do want to expand in town, we've been in touch, or if they decide they might want to leave town, we're in touch, and we can make sure that we're keeping those businesses here. So I think that's critically important. The other piece is, of course, linking in with the master plan, which is in the process of being finalized and voted on. I think really having the committee consider what the people in town really want for that economic development in town is really important. That's what the people have to say, and I think it's important to consider that really in everything that the committee is doing. I love that you're thinking about bringing in more businesses into the fold. I think it's really important that their voices are here. And in that capacity, in my letter, I had said to you that I'm happy to be involved with the committee, no matter whether I'm sitting on the committee or not. And so in the interest of making sure you have a lot of business voices, certainly would be supportive of your bringing in some of the businesses to fill those seats for now. And if there's a need in the future, I'm happy to be there. Of course, I'm happy to be there now too, but I understand that trying to get those business voices in is very important. So I'm happy to answer any questions or.
I think we're going to hold the questions till the end, is that right, or do we want to do on an individual basis now?
You could do it however
Okay.
you like.
All right, why don't we do it on an individual basis
That's
then,
great.
if that's all right? Any questions for Karen? Nothing?
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks
Great.
for the work
Thank
you
you.
do. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Next up is Holly Kenny.
Okay, how's that? Can you guys hear me now? Okay. Hi. Nice to see some familiar faces and to some folks that we haven't met before. I'm Holly Kenny. I own LCK Glassworks, which is an art studio and a gift shop in Westborough. And I've been there for a little over 4 years now. I received a grant, or not a grant, but an award from the EDC in 2019, recognizing myself as a new business, so that was exciting. And that was my first introduction to the EDC, to see the types of things that were going on, the work that you guys were doing. And then when Kate came on board a couple years ago, I had met with her and done some of that work and looked into see what was going on. And then when Zach arrived, I've just been really thrilled to see some of the things that are happening, how he's trying to connect the businesses in town. One of the reasons that I'd like to be involved is that I see, and I think Michelle mentioned this as well, you hear a lot of buzz in town about, oh, why aren't more businesses coming to town? Why aren't we doing more with, there's a lot of empty storefronts, and this was before COVID even. And I'd like to sit at the table and have these discussions with people and try to figure out, I know a lot about what you've done so far to bring businesses into town, but I'd like to be a little bit more, bigger part of that process in a way. And one of the other things I mentioned in my letter is that I'm the chair of the Cultural Council right now, and I'm also heavily involved with the Corridor 9 Chamber of Commerce. And I'd love to see the chamber, they're huge, and they have a lot of different interests, many, many towns. And I'd like to see them figure out a way that we can connect with them a little bit more closely, so that we can kind of look out in a little bit more of a sense with Westborough's interests. So there's that. And then with the Cultural Council, I just think there's a lot of opportunities, and we've talked a little bit about this, to do things. And Michelle highlighted this a lot with Hudson and what's happening in Hudson right now. Things like, we've talked to the council about Art Walk, and we do Arts in Common. And I know even the festival that we just had, the block party downtown, all of those opportunities to connect businesses with residents in town, I think that's really a critical part of it. One of the other things that we had done was I partnered with I think there were about 13, 14 other businesses downtown last year to do a holiday passport, and we sort of did a little stroll, and everybody got to stamp a passport, and it was nice because there's really not a cohesive way for businesses, as Michelle mentioned in Hudson, for businesses to kind of come together and connect, and that was a nice way to do that. I'd love to work to expand that farther to other businesses, you know, bring in Linda's business, others in town that are not just in that little downtown core. So that's pretty much, everything else is in my letter. If I don't get appointed, I would love to consider the ambassador program, or even, as Kara mentioned, I'd like to just be involved, because I think there's a lot happening in Westborough. This is a really exciting time, and especially with COVID, there's a lot of things there's a lot of opportunity, I think. So, thank you. Do you have any
Great,
questions?
thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah.
So just one quick question. Thank you very much. I think part of what we're looking for is that the businesses that are associated with the committee here broadly represent sort of all the businesses and business types across town. So
Right.
if you were kind of the representative for the downtown, you're saying you would be kind of willing to represent the interests of all the businesses that are in the downtown area?
I would be. I hadn't thought, I mean, just because, well, we did the holiday stroll, it was just manageable to do a downtown section, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even if I don't become part of this officially, I'd love to find a way to kind of, similar maybe to what Hudson or Northborough does this as well, like some kind of a local business guide, just things like that that can really connect people and say, hey, this is a destination, this has become in Westborough. So yeah, I would be happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Do that. All right, thanks, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Justin Lundberg. Morning.
So I think I know most of the members of the board here, so I won't take up a lot of your time. Obviously I live in town. I own Westborough Tennis and Swim Club. I've owned that since 2005. I had about a 2-year gap when it was sold, and then because of COVID, I was in a position where I could take that back and keep the club alive and open. I'm on zoning board, conservation commission, and have volunteered in a number of areas in town. And I think this board serves a great purpose for helping existing businesses and new businesses come to town and try and make a go of it in Westborough. We know the business community is an important tax base for the town, and we should be doing everything we can to encourage that. I think that when I first bought Westborough Tennis and Swim back in the early 2000s, I felt that there was a hole for local businesses in trying to connect, and so one of the things we put together was a local health and wellness expo where we just knocked on businesses' doors and invited them to the club back in January when people are looking for to get healthy. And I think it was a great way for some of the businesses to connect. We met a lot of local businesses that we didn't know existed. We introduced them to our members, and I think that it's important for the local businesses to try and connect. And I think this board can help with that purpose, and anything that the board would want me to do in helping with that, I'd be happy to do. So, again, I think I know most of you. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them, but won't take up any more of your time.
Any questions for Justin? No?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is Rod Schaffer.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and visit with you. I've been a resident of Westborough for the past 17 years. Live at 8 Parkman Street, so I probably had the shortest commute today. Obviously, very interested in what's happening in downtown, but also, being a resident, I've looked for what's the best opportunity for me to try to give back to the town, and really trying to utilize the background that I have. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. Got a civil engineering degree from the University of Vermont, go Catamounts, and practiced civil engineering for 4 years in Rutland, Vermont, doing site planning, infrastructure planning. You know, one of the things that the Economic Development Committee, I think, needs to consider is the infrastructure of town, what we have now to support the local businesses. I have a background in that. Moved to Worcester almost 30 years ago and started working for a local construction company, Cutler Associates. At the same time, got a master's from WPI in construction management. So I have a good understanding of what the costs are, what the site planning issues are for businesses that are looking to either expand or come to town. Very interested in understanding, you know, what the town has in terms of properties. I saw Zach at the chamber, and you know, one of the points he made was, what are the best businesses? There's only so many pieces of land, and what are the businesses that we want to promote to come to town? So I think I can help with that, and you know, really excited about what the committee's doing and the opportunities in town. I think, as somebody said, integrating the master plan ideas with what we're doing here. Now that we have a plan, or about to have a plan, we need to try to implement that and making sure that that's not just a big book that sits on the shelf. So be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rod? No? All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is John Shanley, who is not here. I don't know if he's on remote. No? Just Mark? Okay.
I haven't heard anything from John.
All right. So seeing that John is not here, let's go on to Mark Ferreau. Morning, Mark. Can't hear you. I think it's on our end. Hold on a second, please.
You have to use notes. Background note.
Testing,
There we go. Awesome.
better.
Great.
testing,
Thank
okay,
you.
great.
All right, we're good. Good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Ferreau. I work for Caruth Capital. I've worked in Westborough for 32 years, 29 of which were with Caruth Capital. I've worked with many businesses of all types. I used to be a CPA, and I audited primarily residential companies and commercial residential real estate companies and banks. Over my career, I've developed all stages of properties. I know what it takes to develop, attract, support, and keep businesses in Westborough. It's a win-win in Westborough for the residents and the businesses. When we can keep the tax rate up, the commercial tax rate. I think when I first started working in Westborough, the commercial properties paid about 50% of the real estate taxes in town. And I don't know, John Steinberg can confirm this, but I think it's gone down into maybe the 30 to 40%. And I'd like to work with the town and the businesses in town to utilize their existing properties, increase their usage, and have, and having all these businesses in town, businesses support one another. You know, our customers, our tenants, they frequent local restaurants as I do, local businesses, and many of our tenants have employees that work in Westborough and the surrounding area. So I think by having a vibrant economy and a vibrant tax base in Westborough supports everyone. And I know what it takes. I've done it. Many of you know who I am, worked with me, worked with Chris Egan and Caruth Capital. And it's a win-win situation when Westborough is economically vibrant. And I can't think of a better situation to help out the Economic Development Committee, the town of Westborough, and all the businesses in Westborough. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Mark? No questions? All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Next up is Mark Zepp, if I pronounced it correctly. All right.
Spelling is the hard part. It sounds like a PH. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Zeff. Unlike everyone else here, I guess I'm very new to town. I moved here about a year and a half ago. We own a home up on Stone Hill Road, as well as we send 2 young children to school here. And in the middle of the pandemic, my soon-to-be wife on this Friday and I decided that we were working in Boston, commuting, and decided that we didn't like that anymore and decided to open up the Duke Art and Antiques. And we wanted to do it in town, so our commute was local. I grew up in Cambridge, Mass., which is obviously, compared to Westborough, much larger town, but I watched it since I was a child grow. And my mother worked in Kendall Square. If anyone knows that area in Cambridge, it went from when I was a young child taking mother to work, there were 2 or 3 buildings and a fire station down there, to being the largest .com, Facebook, Google, and you name the company. They're sitting there right in the middle of it. And to see the city try and balance those things out, to grow and become a bigger city with a large tax base for businesses, but also allow small businesses to open up and to function together with the city. And I watched the struggles the city had. As a child, I worked, and as a young adult, I worked on different campaigns and worked with different city councilors and watched the struggles of a town. I want to be able to here to help and give my opinions on things, from bike lanes to traffic and widening sidewalks and the arguments I heard from both sides. Neighborhoods that say, I hate the fact, like last year during the pandemic, the city shut down some streets to shared roads 10 miles an hour, and to listen to residents that lived in the streets saying, I don't want to drive 10 miles an hour, to the guy that rides the bike saying, I love having a bike lane. It's a real balance, and I think having, small businesses and big businesses being a group together and really help a town grow correctly is important. I think I can bring a unique perspective into that process. I don't want to take up a lot of time. And also, just to mention, I do agree with everyone. We have a theory that early on, that we want to help other businesses grow, and working with Claire and everyone else here to try and grow the downtown would be great for us. So we will, if I cannot be on the committee directly, I'd be happy to look at an ambassador position or something else to be definitely involved in the community here, is what I'm hoping to do.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
So, Mark, I'm interested about your experience in Cambridge. When you were there, did you have a small business in Cambridge?
No, but I ran a small, one of the oldest restaurant bars in the city for about a year, about 2.5, 3 years, as well as I was a close family friend of the business my whole life. So I had to listen to, have watched what they were struggling with, trying to keep their self afloat, and especially through the pandemic when things were physically shut down. It was. So I didn't own one business in town, but I worked with many, I worked there my whole life as well. Sure. With different companies.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so we're ahead of schedule here. We're doing all right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all very much for coming in and meeting with us and providing us with your background. And I think at this point, we need to discuss as a committee who we would like to recommend. Zach has given us a few pieces of paper in our packets here. One I think we should discuss first, perhaps, is Zach took a look at some of the other towns and how they have comprised their committees. And Zach, if you wouldn't mind, maybe spend a couple minutes just to go over that real quickly. And I think we've talked about this before, obviously, but it's good to...
Sure. I think in our previous meeting when we were discussing membership mix, I had kind of verbally relayed some of the information, but here it is kind of visually presented. We looked at 10 peer communities and the EDCs or similar bodies that they have, and looked at their committee size, and specifically, I think as it's relevant to this discussion, the sort of some have certain qualifications for membership and others have fewer. So if you look on the second page, or the flip side of what you have in front of you, there are places like Holden where, or Upton, where most of their committee members are at large, and they are less prescriptive about what industry or functional group a committee member might represent. And then there are, places like Framingham where, written into the committee charge, they would like one representative from an industrial sector, and then one from a real estate sector, one person from a manufacturing background, and then one person from a finance background. And I think as it is relevant to this discussion, in terms of having a representative body and committee balance, I thought that this might be helpful to you all as you think about what sectors or functions might already be represented and which ones where the committee might have a gap. But that said, that we don't have any, legal restriction about who we appoint, and so it is up to the EDC as to who it would recommend to the select board. But I thought that this might serve as a guide for kind of how it's done in other communities, and it might also inform our membership mix discussion later as well.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, why don't we discuss the candidates if we'd like to?
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
So as Todd mentioned in the beginning, this is our first go-round with the EDC having a voice in who we will appoint to our committee, and that's a privilege, but it's really hard because we were presented with 7 excellent candidates, and all else being equal, we would love to say, come join us, there's work for all of us to do. So I love hearing that you'll all consider being ambassadors or being involved in some other way if you're not appointed to the board. And I know for me, just looking at it, it's really very difficult to decide who to recommend because, again, I would say 7, yep. So I just, all I had to work with really was trying to think about maybe a balanced board and using this information that Zach had presented. I'd never been exposed to that before, but I think it's a really good idea to think about, which voices to add without it being, we can't really distinguish from a contribution standpoint. So I just wanted to put that thought out there.
Thank you. Very well said. Appreciate that. So actually, maybe the first thing we should discuss is that there was one applicant who did not show. So we could, if we're all, depending on how we feel, we could make that 7 go to 6 pretty quickly. If that's how the committee feels. I feel that if somebody wasn't able to make the meeting, we hadn't heard from that person, if I'm not mistaken, then I don't think that it warrants consideration from us. So that's my opinion, and if everybody else feels the same way, then so be it. If not, I'm fine with that as well.
Do we do a motion and second kind of thing for this? How does it
I don't
work?
think we need to, because I don't think if we don't recommend that person, then
I would say a motion and second would be appropriate for somebody the committee would like to recommend, and
yeah.
you have the liberty to do that individually, or you could recommend 3 or 4 or 2 people together as well.
Right.
So a procedural question. If the selectmen choose to, select board, I'll get used to it. If the select board choose to replace town employees with local business people and residents, I think that numerically this would be a very simple task.
Right.
Because the number is almost exactly the same. I mean, if there are 5 employees or 5 staff removed, and you have 7 applicants and you have 2 spots open, that's 7.
Right. And I haven't heard from the select board. I don't know if Zach's had some communication, I think, from them, but I don't know what, perhaps, Sean, you
As
could.
the select board member on the committee, we have not discussed this at any of our meetings yet. So I would say no decision has been made. I don't know. I guess the choice isn't all or none. It may be some combination of individuals, and some people may stay on the board or however. So I guess there could be any range of possibilities still.
Okay.
The board would be looking for a recommendation from the EDC. So
Right.
since we haven't received that yet, we haven't put it on an agenda.
Right.
So we haven't discussed the makeup of the board yet, so.
Right, maybe it's more appropriate to discuss the makeup first, because to Jim's
think
point,
so.
if we decide that we're going to recommend when we found out today, for those of you who haven't heard, it's not, changing the makeup is not something that we have to submit an article at the town meeting for.
Correct.
Apparently, the select board has the power to make that determination and to vote on it and approve it. So perhaps that's the first step we should take, maybe change the agenda a little bit, talk about the makeup of this, and then if that's the case, if we decide that we are going to, we want to increase the number of business people versus town staff, then to Jim's point, I think we can make a recommendation for everybody, and if we so desired, so.
So Todd, through you to the rest of the board and to Zach, actually, I'm looking at the makeup of these other EDCs in other communities. Of the 6 that you were able to get information on the composition, only 2 of those have town staff representatives. And one of them, Concord, actually has a 13-member board. And did you get any information about why that is so large, why that particular community has such a large composition, or in general from any of the communities why they have so few, if any, town staff?
I was not able to get any information about why those decisions were made. I pulled a lot of this information directly from the committee charge, as it was, available online or in these town's bylaws. There was a range. I did notice that the larger boards tend to be from the larger communities. So Concord and Framingham are much larger than Upton and Holden. Though some of the, smaller communities do not have any municipal staff on the committee physically, I did notice that they would occasionally have representatives from other municipal boards. So for example, Holden has a select board representative, which we do as well. And Upton has even a planning board rep and a historical commission rep as well on their board. But in terms of actual municipal staff, it does appear to be quite rare. However, I will caveat that with that the solutions for other communities may not, always be the right solution for Westborough, right? And so obviously we have operated with a large number of municipal staff on this board for some time. And, to go to 0 is an option, but it would be a very dramatic change from how this board has operated in the past. So I would keep that in mind as well.
I certainly wasn't here in 2008, so I don't want to speak for why this was created the way that it was, but I do think that, over the years, we've seen that there was a need for, the permitting departments to be more cohesive and a need to sort of change the image of the town to become more business friendly. And I think that we can all agree that there's been a lot of work done in that effort. And so I think sort of regardless of whether or not they all sit in this committee, the permitting departments, the municipal staff do have that cohesiveness and work well together and are able to support this committee. So I think, there's very few boards and committees where you are so heavy in municipal staff because it's our job, to support these efforts every day. And so I think we certainly, I would like to see a reduction in the number of staff on the committee.
Todd, if I can, as one of those, it's my opinion that the distinction is really about voting members. I know that I would support this committee, and I certainly would attend the meetings to offer my input, because I am always one with an opinion, as people who know me would say. But I think the distinction is voting. The people who make the decisions should be taxpayers, should be businesses, with input from the town departments. But I would fully support the conversion to that taxpayer and business base.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yeah, if I may, Todd, I'd just echo what John said. Regardless of what the committee wants to do, I do believe that there'll still be town staff there, myself being one, even if I'm not a voting member.
Right. Great. Great to hear that. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, for me, I feel like it's important that we keep a certain number of town staff on.
just because it is beneficial to the new members and to everyone coming on who is not familiar with it, and to help us, because and through a transition. So if we're going to do that, I'd like to see a transition over a period of time, you know, not just a change, a major change.
Well, that's a good point, too. You don't have to necessarily vote all 5 of us off voting members if you don't want. You certainly can, but, I mean, there may be 2 or 3 positions that would make more sense to do now, and then
Right,
see how it goes in a year or
right.
6
right.
months.
Well, I think at our last meeting, we talked about 2 positions that we thought made sense to
We
move
did,
from
yeah.
not being voting members, which was the chief assessor and DPW director.
Right, right.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say the DPW director, I wouldn't, or their designee, I wouldn't expect them to be at these meetings regularly. Because there's, albeit the infrastructure is a good point, it was pointed out that that's, I mentioned that that may be something we need to look at, but unless that becomes a topic of that particular month, I don't know that their input from DPW is necessarily needed month to month,
Right.
let me put it that way.
I think the staff should staff this board, but not be voting members. I think there's tremendous value from town staff providing technical advice as well as opinions as to what they've seen work, what doesn't work, and why. But for the consideration of this board going forward, I think that we should hear back from the select board what they choose to do with the formation of this group. And then I think all the candidates we heard from today are excellent. And I would hate to lose their interest, their energy, and their enthusiasm. So I don't know if a motion is appropriate, but I'll make a motion just for discussion, that the EDC recommend all of these candidates, with the exception of Mr. Shanley, who did not appear, for consideration to appointment to the EDC after they decide the composition of the committee.
I don't know if you're looking for a second, but I really think that the EDC should recommend the composition of the membership.
Right.
If you want to have any sort of voice in that, I think that the board would be looking for, you know, this committee's recommendation. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's perfectly appropriate if we want to recommend all 6. You know, if we also say that, you know, maybe our recommendation is that the composition become, you know, whatever it is. Maybe if you remove those 2 positions, then you have 4 spaces. So now they're choosing from 6 people for 4 spaces.
So I defer my motion then till we make a recommendation. I like to keep the motion on the floor, but that motion be secondary to some discussion and recommendation on the composition.
Okay, all right. Jim, you had mentioned the town staff staying on the board, but if I understand correctly, being board members but non-voting members, is that correct?
Or being required to come to the meetings.
Yeah.
To answer questions, provide advice.
Well, we could change the makeup of the board where the town staff stayed on the board and are not voting members, right? We'd increase the number of, we'd be asking the select board to increase the number of people on the board.
Yeah.
If we did that.
I think because there's been so much staff on the committee, there's a concern that the staff won't be here to be a resource. And and I think you could keep a couple on the committee as voting members, but I also think, you know, Jim, myself, Fred, you know, we certainly in our roles are not members of boards that we support, and we just, you know, understand that that's part of our responsibility. So I don't think that you need to create non-voting positions for staff members, as long as we're clear about who you need here. And I think, you know, especially Jim, Fred, myself will be here every month because it's necessary. So regardless of whether we vote or not. And John wants to be here too.
Sort of like Zach.
Yeah, exactly like Zach.
It's
Yes.
sort of like
Yeah.
Zach. He's always going to be technical support, and we'd be the same way.
And so the town voted the specific number of individuals on this board, right? If we wanted to change the number of individuals on the board, potentially that might have to go.
No. So town council, similar to what we did earlier this year with the Country Club Operating Committee, town council's advice has been that because there were no bylaws created to give this board, you know, certain responsibilities or anything that, that the select board as the appointing authority has the authority to determine the composition of the committee.
Thank you.
I would also add, with respect to the size, that I think it's important to note that this committee is already on the higher end of the range of what you see in other communities. In fact, closer to what you see in communities that are, even twice as large as Westborough. And so, I understand we do have a lot more commercial activity than, and we're very thankful for that as communities of similar size. But I would keep that in mind when making the decision.
How the board members feel? I say business board members feel.
Don't be afraid. Go ahead.
I mean, I could go in one of two directions. I like what you said, Jim. I agree. There's energy and enthusiasm. It would be such a bummer to let that go by. And I think we just have excellent candidates, and what a gift, really, as we're trying to take on more responsibilities and really support the town coming out of a pandemic. So, hearing from the town representatives that they would be here to support regardless, I guess my first choice would be to open up 6 spots and recommend 6 people. But I'm very happy to, go a little bit less dramatic as well.
I think it's 5 spots.
No,
right?
well,
Town staff is 5?
we'd open up, we'd keep
And we'd
2
have-
staff
right.
members. And then, right, and we, instead of.
2 openings.
Exactly, so
So
that
we
would
could-
allow us to
Yeah.
grow 6 candidates.
Yeah.
That's my first choice, but I think a mix somewhere between opening up, recommending 4 spots, 4 to 6 would be the sweet spot.
Okay. Any other comments? We do have a motion on the floor, and I forget what the motion was.
It was to recommend all 6 to the
Right. and-
select board,
but then
but
let them-
waiting for us to make a recommendation on the composition of the committee.
So does anyone want to second that, or, as we heard from Christie, it may make more sense for us to, or the preference probably of the select board is that we recommend to them the composition of, what we feel the composition of the board should be.
Right, so what are all the town positions again, right? So
They're listed on that, Sean.
It's the
There's a
chief
list.
assessor.
Yeah.
Zach had provided you a list of
Okay.
the positions, not necessarily the names, obviously, but
Okay.
the positions.
So there's 5, and do we want to select the 4 that would then become, non-voting members, or just wouldn't vote?
Well, I think it's up to the board to how many members of the staff you don't want to be voting members, basically. If you want to select 1 to be a voting member, 2, or,
Right.
I think that's the key question here. I mean, it's been generally talked about having the chief assessor and the DPW representative not being voting members. Now it's a question whether you want to do anything with the other 3 positions.
And if there are 2 more positions that are, kicked off the committee, then you would have the 4 to recommend all 6 candidates.
Right, right, so we'd basically leave 1
On,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like the question would be,
Town
I think it's 6 if you include the select board representative.
Got it, I see, got it, okay.
Kick him off.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds
They're
like the
out.
question might.
You can recommend it.
No.
Yeah, that's right, too. We didn't
How
put
about
that
if
in
we
there.
started out small and just do the two members and just see how that goes, and then we'll go from there instead of making a drastic change?
And you could still recommend 6 candidates
Right.
to the select board, and they would
Right.
just be choosing 4
4
from
of
the
4
the
of the
6.
6,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I like that. I would make a motion to remove the chief assessor and the DPW director. Trying to think of the way to say it.
I'd second that.
Wow. Pretty quick
Okay.
on that one, John.
I support it. I'll just say in the for the sake of conversation, I think removing the chief assessor's position is important, because there's many things relative to businesses that my involvement, I think, and I've always felt, is somewhat restricted because of potential conflict. You know, I deal with the businesses all the time related to tax and valuation, and I think that solicitation of in any sort is not really appropriate. So I would really support and move that, support that motion.
Okay. Thank you, John.
It's not just because I'm enthusiastic.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Just a thought. So you have 2 vacant seats right now. If you remove 2 more, that's 4.
Correct.
Vacant seats. There's no reason why you couldn't suggest that the composition of the board expand by 2 more.
Right.
So you would recommend appointment of 6, and it's really only growing the board by 2.
Right. So then we're up to 13 members, which.
I don't know if that's allowable. I know that the charter, town bylaws specifically mention certain positions, so that may need to be changed.
The EDC is not mentioned, I don't believe, in either of those documents, because if it was, we would need to go to town meeting for approval. 13 is significant, though. I mean, that's a very large committee. I think I think we only have one other committee that's 11, and other than that, we're typically 5, 7, or 9.
Any other discussion, or we do have a motion that was seconded on the floor that we have to vote on, so any other?
Well, you didn't get a second to my motion.
Yeah,
Yes, we
John
did.
seconded.
No.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's
we
my-
haven't
to-
come back to you.
My
We haven't,
motion.
right,
We haven't come back.
we still have
We
your
tabled
motion.
Your motion, I think, and we're
Yes.
acting
Yeah.
on Christie's motion.
Correct.
Right. Right. Anybody else? Okay, so the motion that's on the floor is to remove the chief assessor and the DPW director and replace that with 2 business people in the town. All right, so if there's no further discussion, then we'll start off with the roll call. Alexander?
Since you're in person, you don't have to do a roll call.
Oh, we don't? Okay. All right, great. All right, so all in favor? It's like
Unanimous.
motion is passed. All right. Okay, so now, we have changed the makeup of the board. Now we have to go back to the candidates that we have here. So we have 4, if the select board does approve our recommendation, then we will have 4 openings on the board here, and we have 6 applicants. I think we're all in agreement that we're only going to vote on 6 applicants. Any discussion? Anybody, or a motion or anything?
Well, there is a motion on the floor.
Oh, we still have Jim's
Jim's
motion.
motion on the floor to recommend all 6
Right.
to the select board.
Right.
I'd second that.
But that motion also included that the select board have the authority to change so that needs to be amended. Because that motion had, you had said that the select board would have the,
I recommended all 6. Just to summarize, I recommended all 6, subject to the select
okay,
boards
and if they're changing it based on our recommendation.
deciding on the
Okay.
composition. Yeah.
All right. Is there a second or a discussion?
Yeah, Leonardo seconded it.
Okay. Discussion?
So we're recommending all 6 for 4 spots.
Correct.
Assuming the select board changes the makeup of the board.
Got it.
I think it's okay, even if they don't, you still have all 6 candidates would go to the select board.
Right.
I don't see any reason why any of the people that came forward wouldn't be
Right.
great members on this board.
How will they make the determination? How will they?
That's this guy.
It would be a similar process to what we just went through. So the board would receive the resumes or applications, and then they would invite them to a meeting.
Yeah, I think Francie mentioned too, the select board might be advised to look at the interviews, or not interviews, I'm sorry, but the introductions to EDC
Right,
too.
in preparation.
Yeah, in preparation, they could look at today's meeting too.
So the candidates would be there and be interviewed, or no?
they would be invited to come and interview, and so that the board, if they could ask questions, that's typically how they would fill any opening.
That's how we did it.
No, I remember, but it was 2 for 2.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, I'm in favor of recommending the 4, honestly. I think I might stand alone on that, but I just feel like we're in some ways just shifting a hard decision, and it's going to be hard for the select board as well. But if we want to recommend all 6, that's fine.
I think I agree with that. I think sort of evaluating the 6 and making a decision if we have one would be preferred, rather than passing on the responsibility and the decision-making process to the select board.
Any other comments?
I mean, I think I would agree with that as well. The expertise with it is in this room. It would make sense that the recommendation maybe comes from this room.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor. That motion is to recommend all 6. I think we have to take a vote on that. And unless somebody wants to make a different motion, we could table this motion that's on the floor.
I think we need to vote on
Oh,
that motion,
it was
right?
seconded,
We need
yeah.
to vote on that motion?
Yep. Sorry.
Well, just before you do that, I mean, is there any particular 4 that anybody would suggest we pick? I mean, I guess I'll throw that out there. Karen Henderson, I think at some point had said that she was willing to represent the community, but I think she's willing to defer it too. So if you wanted to take Karen's name off the list, that would be one.
Well, I think I heard all the candidates say that they'd be willing to, almost all of them, I believe, said that they'd be willing to be an ambassador and stay involved with the committee. So I think that hopefully they are all true to their word and are willing to do that.
I'm gonna pin you down on that one.
It's not going to be easy, and again, the only thing that I used as guidance, because there are no easy answers, is the mix of background and industry, maybe location. I hadn't thought of that, but that's another thing to throw into the mix to try to help guide a really difficult decision.
All right.
I think, in my opinion, we have a mix there of business owners in LC that are also residents, and Justin, Holly, and Mark, and then a property owner that represents a property owner, and Justin and Mark Ferreau, Mark Zapp, just to and then you have a taxpayer, that happens to live downtown in Rod, just to sort of isolate what the qualifications are relative to the individuals. And I think it's somewhat prudent to pick a mix, or in my opinion, would be to go with the business owners and the property owner representative, while I think Rod's and having taxpayers' involvement is important. I think you sort of cross some of those off with the property owners that are also residents. So I guess in summary, that would be to recommend Holly, Justin, Mark Ferreau, and Mark Zeff.
Question for our audience, or I don't know.
Sure.
How we do?
Yeah.
Mr. Schaefer, I don't know if you're familiar with the planning board at all. So, your qualifications make you appear to be an excellent candidate for our planning board, if you would ever consider that at some point in the future, and I just sort of put that out there. I think the planning board is always looking for good candidates. So if for some reason, whether or not you get this opportunity.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, Mike. And as I mentioned, I'm interested in supporting the town using my background. I see the interested in the planning committee, but I see this group as perhaps being a little bit more dynamic and more out in the community as opposed to planning board's more receiving things. This one's more trying to make an impact by being out in the community.
Got it. Thank you.
I definitely support Holly, Kenny, and Mark Zeff. I think that we've had a lot of discussion about the need for the vibrance of the downtown, and given that both of them have businesses located in the downtown, and given what we know the master plan is going to speak to, and talking about the bid, I think that having some good representation downtown would be really beneficial.
And I just want to say, I think that Karen Henderson is more than a taxpayer, just an involvement, connection to town at every event. You know, going to represent a voice, I know what you're going to say. I think represents more than a really important voice in this community for this board.
Yeah, I think Karen's done as much for economic development in this town as, as just about anybody. So I really like her as a candidate.
I would echo what you both said, and she's done a ton for the town, continues to do a lot, and I'd love to see her get involved with our committee. So it sounds like there's consistent, I'm not sure how others feel. I've heard a couple of people talk in favor of Holly Kenny and Mark Zeff and Karen Henderson. So it sounds like there's some consistency between those three so far. Anyone want to talk about a potential fourth if we're all in agreement with those three? Or we can actually go on an individual basis too, right? That's how
You
we
could
would
do that,
actually do.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to quickly. I really do, I'm a big fan, but I feel like a little bit, I know I'm not on the committee, so I don't have a voice. But I do think, as much as I would love to be on the committee, I am happy to step up anytime. I am a little bit quasi-town. I mean, I'm not a town employee, but I kind of, where our board is appointed by the Board of Selectmen, I mean, I see myself as more on that side, maybe sometimes than the business side. So I do feel like you have a lot of good candidates from the true business world. I know we're a nonprofit, and that's a voice also. But I really am happy to step in or, again, be an ambassador. I do think you have a really good pool of candidates. So I mean, I'm still happy to be on the committee, but I do think when you're looking at that makeup, to bring in some of those voices, my voice is going to be here whether you like it or not.
We like you, Karen.
But it doesn't have to be as a voting member.
Your Shop Local series, you did a couple of those. I just think that's so representative of exactly the kind of work that we want to do here. So again, just saying. That wasn't a town employee, that was supportive business, local community.
Well, we got to make some decisions here.
Well, that's why we're running ahead.
Yeah.
Give us some
So
time.
I have a thought. Why don't we just do individual nominations, and when we have four, we have four.
I think that's the way to do it, Jen.
So
Good.
I'll nominate Mark Zeff.
I
to be on the
second that.
committee.
Okay. Any discussion? We've had some. Okay, no discussion? All in favor of Mark Zeff? Okay. We will, actually, we will be making a recommendation to the board in support of Mark Zeff. All right, so there's one. Anyone else want to make a motion?
I make a motion for Karen Henderson.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Karen Henderson? 1, 2, 3, 3? 4? 4. So that is 4 out of,
4 out of 9 members present.
okay. Opposed? So that,
You're not
Only eight.
recommending
that does
her.
not,
Sorry,
we are
8,
not.
4 out of 8, so that's actually
So it's tie.
What?
tie.
I would just say, the only reason that I very much appreciate everything Karen's done. The only reason I didn't raise my hand is because of the comments that she's made about, sort of her interest and her, sort of willingness, I guess, to wait for the next opening. But, she certainly isn't a great candidate, so it's just difficult.
Yeah.
I concur with that, and I think, the emphasis on the ambassador program, I think, is a really big thing to comment on, because I think it's important that sort of revive itself. And I think Karen is a prime candidate for the outreach in the ambassador program. So I just want to emphasize that for anyone who isn't recommended until the time comes, perhaps, where other town departments are no longer on the committee. Because I think the ambassador program is really important. I think Zach's ready to take the bull by the horns with that and really get the ambassadors involved.
Yep, and that is one of the goals that the EDC had agreed upon for this fiscal year 22, in terms of when it is going to be lifted off. The local rapid recovery planning program and our kind of downtown revitalization efforts have been much of the focus over the summer, simply because of the timing and of that program. But this fall, the board and my office are hoping to really provide some lift to the ambassador program and turn that around and bring it back into the forefront. And so that'll be happening literally next. So just providing some added color there.
And to be honest with you, Karen is our biggest ambassador, whether she's officially has that title or not. The work that Westborough TV does now for the committee is just unbelievable. So she's already there, to be honest with you.
I don't want to add any pressure, but I do believe that Scott has a meeting that he will have to be leaving for very shortly. So if we want to...
Okay. Well, that one was not a majority, so that
Right.
it's not a recommendation.
Make a motion to nominate Holly Keeney.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Okay. We got 2 to go. Let's see.
I think you need representation from the, I'm sorry, did I cut you
No,
off?
go ahead.
I think you need representation from the corporate side. We have interest from small businesses. I think you need it from the corporate side as well. So I recommend Mark Ferreau.
I second that.
Second? All right, any discussion? All in favor? It's 3, 1 more. Taking a look at the makeup that we have now, anybody, anything that we feel we're missing? So we have Rod, Justin, who am I missing? That's it.
I think just rethinking what I had said before. I like to change my mind too, just ask my wife. I think Justin really gives so much to the town already. I think while he does represent both property owner as well as local business, I think that Rod Schaefer does represent something that's not represented in town, which is I don't want to say simple taxpayer, but a real estate property owner who lives in town but is not a business. And I think that I would make a motion to put forward Rod Schaefer's name.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? All right. There we go. We have our 4. Those of you who aren't being recommended, again, we can't stress it enough, please stay involved. Love to have you as part of the ambassador program, and we don't know what the future holds as far as the makeup of this board. So please, we encourage you to continue your involvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think next on the agenda was the LRRP update.
Yes, and with respect to the LRP, the deadline for the final plans to be submitted to the Department of Housing and Community Development has actually been extended to October 9th. So we have until then to continue working on our final plans. For Westborough, I've been working with Haggerty Consulting to develop our plans, and they are very mature at this point. We are probably only 1 to 2 weeks out from having our final plans complete. And as a result, we will be having like a kind of a final stakeholder meeting and a final public meeting to kind of present those plans at the end of September and get any last minute feedback on what we have. I'd also like to give you guys an overview of the sort of the 10 projects that will be recommended from the local rapid recovery planning effort. These have been recommended after doing a diagnostic survey that received input from 34 businesses in the business community in the downtown area specifically. Looking at those survey results, having stakeholder conversations with not only the core stakeholder group, but various business owners as well outside in the downtown area, and as well looking at all of the best practice case examples and samples of potential project ideas that the state has helped connect the consultants and myself to as well. So if I may just give a quick overview of what those 10 projects are, that would be great. And so our first project is on promoting outdoor dining by drafting a policy to enable dining in right-of-ways by leveraging street parking and sidewalks where possible, as well as providing interested restaurants with the infrastructure necessary to do a weekend-only pilot program. So rather than fully committing to having those parking spaces, which is a controversial topic, being used for outdoor dining all the time, we are recommending that we look at temporary, more portable infrastructure that can be kind of moved out on Friday afternoon, Thursday night, and then kind of moved back on Sunday evening, and then reevaluating in the future depending on what public feedback on that program is.
That's great.
The second project is about activating vacant storefronts with pop-up installations, which could be a combination of temporary art installations, temporary pop-ups for local entrepreneurs, or even things like renderings of possible uses in windows, and working with landlords, property owners, and brokers to make that happen. Third project is on creating a comprehensive wayfinding system for the downtown area that directs people through and to Westborough and to things like parking, amenities, business districts, recreation, transit options, and other areas of significance. And we would do that by creating wayfinding signs and stations throughout the downtown and at some of our major traffic choke points in the community. The fourth project is launching a sign improvement campaign, which will begin with amending the zoning bylaw to allow for longer projection signs on storefronts in the downtown business district, and then offering participating businesses matching funds, if possible, to upgrade their signs. And then finally, conducting an audit of signage and zoning regulations to assess any further changes for business friendliness. The next project is to create a night market program where businesses and other groups or food trucks might offer their services in specific locations in the community during the evening to activate those spaces at night, leveraging support from the arts, music, and general creative community. The sixth project is to promote pedestrian and bicycle mobility in a two-phase project. In phase one, where we would increase the amount of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure with things like benches, bike racks, picnic tables, or small parks, otherwise known as parklets, to revitalize the community's interactions with public space. And then in phase 2, we would propose conducting a broader study on a longer range mobility plan for the community to try and connect our downtown business district with things like the MBTA, schools, and other recreational assets throughout Westborough. Project number 7 is to create an online business directory to display information about Westborough businesses, including location on a map, hours of operation, business descriptions, contact information, website links, active promotions, and calendars to help connect customers to local businesses better in the digital age. Project number 8 would be to launch a branding campaign specifically for our downtown business district. Project number 9 is to develop a minority and women-owned business outreach and support plan where we would engage community members and diversity and inclusion experts, including our Center for Women in Enterprise, which is a friendly neighbor and community member in Westborough, to better engage and support Westborough's women and minority business enterprise community. And then the last project recommendation is to create a shared marketing program for our downtown business district campaign based on the Shop Grafton campaign, where customers might get something like a $100 gift certificate or have an opportunity to win a $100 gift certificate for visiting participating Westborough businesses, or visiting at least 10 participating businesses in the month. And so that's a program that we have learned has worked really well for Grafton, and it would be like a month-long campaign to encourage people to visit some of our businesses downtown. And so those are our 10 projects, and we are currently as well looking at funding opportunities for those projects, including leveraging American Rescue Plan funds, as well as other grant programs that are both state, local, and private, including local cultural council grants, shared streets and spaces grants, destination development capital grant program, the MassWorks infrastructure program, a community compact IT grant, MDI's technical assistance grants, and for an example of private sector grants we're looking into, T-Mobile has like a hometown grant program for placemaking initiatives. And so we are, again, still fine-tuning. These are not final, and the details, specifically the implementation details, are still being worked out. But that is a bit of an overview and a taste of what we are hoping will come out of the local rapid recovery planning effort.
Those are all great programs. That's excellent.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
So the $100 gift card, that's just for downtown business visits?
It could start with downtown business. The reason why it is downtown business is because the local rapid recovery planning program was targeted at a specific study area, and the study area that the town had applied for was not quite exactly our downtown business BB zone, but a collection of businesses in and around the Rotary. The thinking for a lot of these projects is that because that's the spirit of the program, we have to tie it to that specific study area. But after maybe a year or two of success, we could consider expanding it to include our other business districts as well.
I just wanted to, there's some of the projects sort of tie into some other things that are happening. I know that the Cultural Council, at the request of the Select Board, has been working on a public art policy, and so making sure that if you haven't already, making that connection, because I know that there's a lot of excitement behind it. It's really would be exciting, once that's finalized. And then also the EDC might want to consider at our October meeting voting to support the alcohol bylaw amendment, because that would really clarify the ability of a business to serve alcohol on a sidewalk. So it would speak to the outdoor dining.
Can you tell us more about that amendment?
Yeah, so I can send that out to the full, or I can send it to Zach, and he can send out the full warrant. Right now, we have an alcohol bylaw in our general bylaws that prohibit the use of alcohol in certain municipal buildings, on public ways, and other things. And so the way that the bylaw has been updated is really to continue to prohibit it, except allowing the Select Board to be able to give authorization. And so one of the spaces, the public ways being sidewalks, if if a business were to just need to serve, we would want to make sure that that could be included, obviously, in their space.
Great, thank you.
I have a comment as well. I noticed that one of the top projects was outdoor dining on the weekends and portable outdoor dining facilities. And this board has talked about that in the past, a couple of years ago, and we were always concerned about how it would actually be physically implemented and provided safely. And I have photos of how it's been implemented in large cities and small cities, so I'll be happy to share those with you.
Let's definitely connect offline, Jim, and yeah, if it's helpful too, we can have a conversation with the consulting team as well and just
Great.
Make sure that all our bases there are covered. And likewise, thank you, Christy, for mentioning the Westborough Cultural Council and their work on the public art policy. We are very excited about that as well.
Thank you. Any other? Yeah.
So you mentioned this is due October 9th, so sort of what's the timeline of events in order to get the proposal in?
So the state has given us relatively prescriptive project recommendation sheets that each have a section for things like who will be kind of like the project owner and what the budget might be and what some of the sources for that budget might be and what the key action items for implementation would be. And there is no requirement from the state that we have a public meeting prior to submitting our plans. But it has been the feeling of myself and the consultants that would be helpful, especially as it pertains to building community buy-in for a lot of these projects. And so I think the timeline would be in the next 2 weeks or so. We're hoping to put a bow on those plans themselves, have a presentation at the end of September, make any final tweaks that first week of October based on that public feedback, and then submit to DHCD by their deadline.
Thank you.
And I would also like to caveat as well, we are somewhat limited by staff capacity in terms of how we can make these all happen. I do not think that it would be the expectation that we would be pushing on all these concurrently, but that there might be 2 to 3 high priority ones that we try and tackle more immediately rather than others. And then, as well, depending on the willingness of other boards, committees, or civic organizations in town to get involved and maybe take larger roles in some of these projects, we might be able to do an additional, 1 or so, depending on community interests like that.
To Zach's point, that it'll be a phased implementation. For instance, the bylaw on the signs would take, at the earliest that could happen would be March of '22. And
Exactly.
That's assuming that's, so there's some legislative things that would have to go into place in some of these as well.
Sure. Great. Thank you, Zach. Next is the planner's report. Jim?
So I'll be brief. The planning board opens the hearing for the Verizon expansion up at 400 Freiburg Parkway. That's a new building that's going to be built in the parking area of the existing building at 400 Freiburg. And then the 21st of September, we open the public hearing for 64 Otis Street, which is the next Amazon fulfillment center. That's a same-day fulfillment center, very different from the project at 4400 Computer Drive that received approval back in July. Also, on September 21st, we open the public hearing for the new brew pub proposal for the relocation of Cold Harbor to Otis Street at 66 Otis Street, right next door to the Amazon project. Looking forward to that. I think that'll be a great location for Cold Harbor's relocation. Those are 3 key projects that if anyone is interested in, please tune into the planning board.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other business?
I would like to acknowledge that Amada Senior Care of Westborough has opened, I should know the exact address, but don't quote, I believe 18 Lyman Street. And they had a ribbon cutting with the 9:45 405 chamber I think about 2 weeks ago. And I believe Convenient MD of Westborough, on Turnpike Road, is also having a ribbon cutting with the Quarter 9495 Chamber later this month.
Okay. So are they open now? They have their CO?
Well, they're getting close.
Okay.
Well, I didn't want to bring that update quite yet because
All right.
they're calling for final inspections this week, hopefully, so if all goes well, they should be able to occupy, albeit, my understanding is they have to go through a state process, so even if we give them
Right.
occupancy, it's several months before they actually can open to patients, but I don't know that process.
Yeah.
I've just heard that as a rumor.
Okay. And any movement on Burger King?
Well, so Burger King had to make some changes to the drive-through. Basically, the traffic flow wasn't quite what we expected, so they had to go through the planning board, and the planning board found that as a de minimis change, but they're working through the engineering. So they have a revised plan to get the drive-through to work a little bit better. And just the traffic circulation, they found that people were going every which way, so there's supposed to be a circular motion around the whole building and all the facilities, and that wasn't quite happening, so they've modified the medians to allow for that now. So until that physically happens, there's some hesitancy to, matter of fact, not only hesitancy, they won't open Burger King till that's done.
Wow.
So hopefully that'll coincide with their final inspections as well.
Okay.
So I can't give you a date on them. Hopefully Convenient MD, as I said, will be ready this week or next, but I don't know when they'll actually open up due to
Right.
the regulatory
Yeah.
things they have to go through.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll be able to give you an update in October, but I've been telling you that since January, so.
Anything else?
The only other thing I would like to raise at this time is, I know at our last meeting, the committee had aligned that a desire to have the annual awards this year, as we had in years past. I just wanted to bring that up again in light of possible changing COVID-19 restrictions and implications. Obviously, I would love to have the event if we can, but in terms of having it in the way in which we have had it in the past, I'm not sure if I would feel comfortable, putting a deposit on, on the DoubleTree.
Right.
To do something like that with so much, I guess, ambiguity of what 3 months, 4 months from now will look like at this time. I'd be curious to know if the committee has any other opinions on that.
Yeah, the car show is already so there was supposed to be a car show at DoubleTree. They have already canceled because there's no certainty that Board of Health, Select Board, or whoever are gonna be able to hold to the large oak gatherings. So it's a good point. The uncertainty is kinda out there right now.
Yeah, and from a timing perspective, we would have to get going on that yesterday.
Right.
To do it and to pull it off in January, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we could consider moving forward with something smaller in the Great Hall, and then that's, easier. There's no contract, obviously. There's no cost, and so there might be something smaller that we could plan on, and then if you needed to cancel at the last minute, or make changes, it wouldn't have a budgetary impact.
Right.
Yeah, I think something smaller, or, even virtual potentially might be kind of no regrets ways forward. I just think that it would be quite risky to try and plan the event in the way that it had existed in years past. So either a smaller scale event or a remote event might be the best path forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate reality right now, is that there is just so much uncertainty, and as much as it is a fantastic event and people look forward to that, and I think I would agree with you. I think we're probably better off looking into either a smaller venue or doing it virtually.
What about a delay to a different time of year, spring maybe? It gives us just more time to see what's happening and not commit.
Yeah.
And more time to pull it together as well.
I'd be open to that as well. I think, instead of January, if you guys want to do March or,
Yeah.
April or something like that. Again, it gives us time to see how the situation plays out.
I think it may make some sense to bring that up as an agenda item for next month.
Yeah.
And talk it through a little bit more thoroughly, rather than making a decision rapidly here today.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's table it for now and we can discuss next month.
Makes
But-
sense.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll have more members
You'll
to
have maybe
join the
maybe
discussion.
new
Different members.
exciting members.
Anything else? Well, I just wanted to thank everybody, because I know today was one of our more challenging meetings, and I appreciate everybody's opinions and thoughts, and I think we hopefully came to a solution that the select board is agreeable to, and hopefully we have some new members joining us shortly. So thank you all.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
And motion to close?
I second.
I know that.
All in favor? All right, we'll see you in a month.
All right.